Hello and welcome to the Air Force ISD lesson. How many of you have done a construction project or a general project around the house? I know I have, and from my experiences, it can be a very frustrating process if I don't plan properly. I usually find myself making multiple trips to the hardware store or sometimes even have to change my plans in midstream. That's kind of what we're going to talk about today when we talk about the Air Force ISD process. Look at this guy. He's planning a construction project much like we would plan a new course within the Air Force. First thing we're going to, and you can see for some of the ideas that he has in his head, what's on his mind, and of course money is always one of the first ones. But first thing we would do, just like in a course, we would want to know our needs or our objectives. He must first think about his reason. So why use ISD? The normal process I've witnessed over the years is we're given directions, we develop slides, we develop student guides, and we start having class. And we want to go about it in more of a systematic way. In addition to that, the bottom line is we have to have a systematic approach. We've actually been directed by Air Force Manual and the Command Joint Chief Staff's instruction to utilize a systematic approach to developing training. And within the Air Force, all lessons will relate back to some aspect of ISD. Air Force ISD is the official method of developing instruction within the Air Force. So where are we headed? We're going to briefly look at the definition, discuss the systematic approach, the Air Force ISD model, and the system of functions. Air Force Manual 36-2234 and Air Force Manual 36-2236 defines ISD as a deliberate and orderly but functional, flexible process for planning, developing, implementing, and managing instructional systems. It ensures personnel are taught in a cost-efficient way the knowledge, skills, and attitudes essential for successful job performance. ISD is not something new. It started around the end of World War II and first appeared in the Air Force. The first ISD model was created in 1965. It wasn't created by the military. Most American companies had some version of the ISD model. As you can see, here's one that was created in 1965. What we're going to talk about today are the system of functions, and in the middle you will see a definition of a system. But we're going to talk about management, support, administration, and delivery. These are functions, and we're also going to discuss the central function of evaluation. These are functions that must be present for us to put on a course or have a schoolhouse within the Air Force. Here is the full ISD model, and you can see the functions on the outside of management, support, administration, and delivery. Internally, you'll see ADDI of analysis, design, development, implementation. You notice evaluation in the center. Some schools of thoughts will call this a phase. Some will call it a function. Within the Air Force, it's called a central function that would happen at every phase of the ISD process. In the Air Force ISD model, you will see quality improvement on the outside, because ISD is a quality improvement process. Remember, we're continuously evaluating to make sure we did it right. Previously, I used to have the word constraint out here because there's always constraints like we talked about earlier. Time, funds, equipment, so forth and so on. And just remember, we live in and work in a ever-changing environment. And as our missions change, we go through fiscal tough times or fiscally prosperous times, money. Sometimes in a time of war, our time is cut short. We must produce more graduates. Sometimes we have a surge of personnel that may show up, or we may lack supplies, or may have to move to a new facility. New equipment is being used out in the field, so if we're going to train someone on the actual equipment, we must also have that equipment. Why train someone on out-of-date equipment? And of course, we must have the expertise within the schoolhouse. We want subject matter experts teaching the students the new knowledge they need to go out and do their job. Here's the system of functions with evaluation, the central function. The first one we're going to look at is management, the first function. Here's where the decision makers are, controllers of the system. A lot of people automatically want to say this is the commander or their supervisor. It's the person that is directing and controlling ISD functions or the curriculum development of a project. They're directing and controlling the ISD phases. Maybe a supervisor or commander, but normally it's someone that's an instructional system specialist that is in charge of the curriculum development project. Next, we have support. It's the second function. They supply the equipment and parts we'll need to maintain all the tangible parts of the system. They will produce the instructional materials such as mock-ups, simulators, and visual aids. Visual services, we can make our own slides, but we need more than that in our classrooms to keep our students engaged. And there's several support functions across the base that's there and within our individual units to help us produce attractive course material, mock-ups, student guides, so forth and so on. Within the 505th Training Squadron, we have a graphic support section, and they help us produce student support materials. Then we have the administration function. This function is charged with doing the basic administrative activities that support the instructional system. This support is different than the support because it is only concerned with administration. Some of the activities administrators will do are providing documents, maintaining records, administrative staff, record keeping, and student support. They also handle scheduling. So don't confuse support and administration. I refer to the administration as day-to-day record keeping. Support maintaining all parts of the system. Next, we will have delivery. We briefly went over those system functions, and this is a little more direct, general definition of each function. Directing, controlling for management. Support, maintaining all parts of the system. Administration, processing and record keeping. Delivery, means of instructing the students. And evaluation, gathering feedback. And we want to stress evaluation. Usually this is the step that most schoolhouses will omit or overlook. Here at the 505th Training Squadron, where you will be working, we have an evaluation section. Dr. Hurst is the head of that section, and it's his job, and he's his office is actually called Stand Eval. He's an evaluator. He's going to make sure that we're taking care of all the other areas. He's going to evaluate the other functions to include you as an instructor doing instructor evaluations. They're going to make sure the curriculum development section and curriculum production is doing their job well. And those internal and external evaluations, like I said earlier, in the course evaluations while the students are here, and then external evaluations once they're out on the job to see how well we're doing. But this is a continuous process that will go on throughout the life cycle of the course. Continuously, the ISD process is always working. So we briefly looked at the definition, the system approach, the Air Force ISD model, and then the system of functions. ISD to a lot of instructors is a bad word, and I've heard the attitude that it's the curriculum cops process. Yes, we do control our curriculum. We do have described objectives and tasks that we must teach. Remember, all our training is student-centered, and we want to teach not what you as a subject matter expert think is important, even though there is room for that. Actually, the subject matter experts, you create the training, but we want to have our training to be student-centered, where you teach what the student needs to know to be successful on the job. So ISD doesn't stand for I said do it, even though we have no choice. We must use a systematic approach, and that approach in the Air Force is ISD. But I would look at it more as a useful tool. You don't have to be an ISD expert. We have those in the schoolhouse. You just need to have a general understanding of what it is and how it's being used to develop training with